Welcome to Learn Laws, where knowledge is power, not legal advice, just for education. Need real counsel, don't roll the dice. Always speak with a licensed attorney.
Welcome to Learn Laws. I'm James White, and we're here with Andrew Easler, who's an attorney, of course. For today's show, we're going to be discussing how to become an attorney, and what's that like, and why you became an attorney. And I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions because I think it's really important based on what's going on in the world today. So, I'm going to read this off my computer here because I want to make sure I get this right. So according to the American Bar Association and the Law School Admission Council, about 117,000 students were enrolled in U.S. law schools in 2024. Nearly 38,000 of them were first-year students, which is a 5% increase from the year before that. Around 36,000 students earned their JD this year, 2024. And in 2025, applications are already up around 25%, which clearly shows that a lot of people are considering law school.
Right.
And so I said, hey, this is a great topic for the show. There's a lot of people looking at becoming attorneys or lawyers, and they just don't know where to start. They want to maybe speak with an attorney. They may not know somebody. So this is a great show for anybody that wants to become an attorney and wants looking at, maybe exploring a career as being a lawyer or an attorney. And we use those words interchangeably. They essentially mean the same thing, right? They don't mean anything different, do they?
Well, in the United States, they basically mean the same thing. Attorney, same thing as a lawyer.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Okay, so my first question to you is, what made you want to become an attorney?
So I had originally been working in a lot of different businesses that required legal counsel, and I was not happy with the results that I was getting. So I said, screw it, I'll just do it myself.
That was it. And I think overall that was probably a pretty smart move, right?
Yeah, I think I definitely don't have any regrets with making that decision. But there's a lot of things that I hadn't considered before I decided to jump in. So
yeah,
it's an interesting journey.
And knowing you before you became an attorney, knowing kind of our prior business experience, because obviously you're an entrepreneur too, so you've done a lot of different, you've explored a lot of different business opportunities. And I remember you saying to me one day, "Hey, James, I cannot find an attorney I'm happy with. I'm going to go to law school myself." And I said, "How are you going to find the time to go to law school?" And you said, "Well, I'm going to have my full-time job, 9 to 5, and I'm going to do evenings. I think it was like 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. 11. It was, you worked very hard.
Nights. We'll just call it nights.
Nights. There you go.
Yeah, it was definitely the term that we use in law school is non-traditional student.
Non-traditional student. So what does that even mean?
Basically, you didn't wake up at 6 years old and say, I wanted to become a lawyer, or you did, and somehow that entire trajectory didn't happen for you right after you graduated from undergrad. So you maybe went into a different career, maybe you got married and had kids, or maybe you had a different path in life and you decided later on that you wanted to go to law school and become an attorney.
So what is the first step in, like, when you decided to become an attorney, what is the first step that you took to make that happen?
Well, the first thing that you should do is research, right? Figure out what it really entails and what kind of aspects of the career that interest you and why. Learn more about yourself before you make that decision, and then learn about the career path. And so if you're listening to this podcast, that's probably step one, is trying to understand, well, what are the steps to becoming an attorney? Can I meet the steps? Do I want to do what an attorney does? And then talk to people, right? No matter what I say, I've been an attorney for 4 years. So I'm kind of in this sweet spot. So I still remember what it was like to apply and go through law school. But I also have now got several years under my belt. But of course, talk to somebody who's been an attorney for 20, 30, 40 years. And get a feel for what it used to be like, for what their experience is. And then talk to somebody who just graduated, who just went through law school and that whole process. The more information that you can get, the better, well-rounded view you're going to get.
So you obviously need an undergrad degree, right? Is that what it's called, an undergrad degree?
Yeah. So there's the requirements to become a lawyer throughout the United States, at least, all start with having already completed a bachelor's degree, so 4-year degree undergrad.
So does it have to be like a pre-law degree, or can it be like any undergrad degree?
It can be pretty much any undergrad degree. So, and again, we're not talking about people coming in from another country with their own degrees and then bringing it over here. So that's a whole different story there. But yeah, so you're going to start over with a bachelor's degree. Now, there is a pre-law path, and a lot of people do a pre-law degree, but it does not have to be any particular field. And in fact, there have been some studies on what degrees are most successful. And I believe on top are STEM degrees.
Really?
So a lot of us in the law we rely on formulas, right? It's all logic and reasoning and elements that we have to prove. And if you're really good at math and science and chemistry, sometimes those formulas are easy for you to translate when you're looking at rules of law.
That's really interesting, because I always thought it would be like an English degree, some sort of English, because I know you have an English degree, right?
Yeah. So one of the important skills as a lawyer is being able to read things quickly and comprehend things very quickly. So a very good high level of reading comprehension is extremely beneficial in law school.
So when you decided to become an attorney, obviously you had to do what they call an LSAT, right? And it's LSAT. Is that how you pronounce it? So it's an LSAT.
Yep.
Okay. So explain what an LSAT test or an exam is, and how that process works, because I think a lot of people get scared with the LSAT, right? I would assume some people study for months on end to get a good grade so they can get to the right law school. I'm assuming that's how it works.
Right.
But just kind of explain how the LSAT, I guess, works, and then how people can address studying, or should they study. I know when we talked when a long time ago, you said you never studied, you just went and wrote it one day and you got great grades, right?
Yeah, so the LSAT is not something that you're probably used to if you've never really looked into it. The LSAT is not there to measure what knowledge you have in your brain and what knowledge you can recall, which is a lot of times what you're looking at in like an SAT or an ACT. An LSAT is more of logic and reasoning. Can you figure out the answer based on the information that you're provided?
So how are they graded? Because are LSAT standard? They're standardized tests, right? So every individual or person that wants to enroll in law school has to go through that LSAT, right? I would assume some states might have some exemptions. I think in 2024 they started to remove some of these requirements, and again, that state, there's all these changes happening right now. So
So if you're going to go to an ABA accredited law school in the United States, you're going to need an LSAT score.
that makes sense, and that's standardized across the board. So it's all the same, no matter who you are, where you come from, how you got to the LSAT seat.
As far as I'm aware, I haven't checked every law school lately. I mean, there's some changes that have been made, some experiments that some state bar associations are making with regard to admission to the bar. But in terms of law school admissions, it usually starts with the LSAT.
And how are the grades? Like, how does somebody get a good grade, I guess, right? Like, is there such thing as a good or a bad grade?
Well, it's not necessarily that you can get a bad grade. It's just you need to reach a certain level. Okay, LSAT is graded two different ways. First, you get an actual output score, and then you have a curve. So they may adjust that score based off of how well or how poorly the rest of that entire administration did in that session.
That's crazy. So you could technically pass or get a great score, and then they would adjust it downward based on your class.
Correct. And that's. Do
you think that's fair?
Well, that's how all of law school is. That's the start of a very a similar procedure that's followed through the rest of law school and the bar exam.
So why do they have? What is the purpose of that? Because that to me, that doesn't make any sense.
Right. So I didn't write the exam and I didn't set the rules, so please don't hate on me.
Yes.
But the idea is to make it very competitive. And, there are a lot of very, very, very intelligent, high-performing people who are trying to get into law school. And the more people that are applying to law school means the more people that have to be rejected. Well, if you need more people to be rejected and everyone gets 100, right? And there's some people that get a 99, some people get a 98, some people get a 97. That 97 might have to be the one that gets rejected, even though in any other standard metric, you'd be excelling.
That's pretty
It's hard.
that's shocking to me because
Yeah.
I didn't know that. So for me that's like, wow, I that's crazy. So okay, so you get a grade, I guess, or you get one of the higher tier grades or the lower tier, whatever you want to call it. How do you apply to law school so you do your LSAT first, right? And
so generally you're going to start with your LSAT, and most people will, even though it's technically not testing your knowledge, it's a good idea to do some studying beforehand, right? There's some classes that you can take, there's books that you can read, practice things you can do just to get your brain to get into the mindset of the types of questions that you're going to be asked, okay, on the exam. And then once you get your score back, you're going to have an idea of the tiers of law schools that you're going to be eligible for. And that's going to basically help you narrow down the law schools that you can apply to and the ones you're more likely to get into. But your LSAT score is only one of many factors that the law school is going to look at. They're also going to look at your undergrad GPA. And so it's the primary metric would be the law school LSAT plus your undergrad GPA plus your resume, your application, and then your statement, right? Why are you coming to law school? Whatever you've written as an essay to the admissions office and whether they like that essay or not.
So that makes it very stressful, right? Because I've never gone to university. I don't have an undergrad degree. I'm a self-made entrepreneur. I help people start their own businesses based on my own, personal experience. Some people say I am an attorney, like I think like an attorney, but I'm not an attorney. They say I think like I'm an attorney, but I'm not. So when you're applying for law school, what type of law schools should somebody apply for? Obviously we call them like Ivy Leagues, if that's what you want to call them, or, there's some other schools out there. And now I know you went to FAMU, correct? And that's
FAMU
Florida
College of Law.
And
Orlando.
what's the actual legal name? Florida
A&M University College of Law.
And that was a great school. I think
Yeah.
that was a really good school for you. And I know when you were saying, hey James, which school should I apply to? You applied to a couple other ones and you were accepted, but you ultimately chose FAMU out of Orlando only because you lived in Melbourne and they had a lot of other advantages than some of these other schools. Primarily, it was more cost effective, right? It was more affordable. Right. And I always said to you, and I think this is the most important statement when you're becoming an attorney. You can go to Harvard, you can go to one of these, what they call Ivy League schools, or you can go to maybe a state school or whatnot. And it really, to me, it doesn't matter what school you graduate from, as long as you have the curiosity and you have the ability to critically think. I think that it's because it's all about legal research and retaining that information. So for me, I don't think it matters what law school somebody will go to. Now, I think some people it does matter because of networking opportunities and introductions and so forth. But for me looking on the outside of your career, I think it was actually beneficial that you didn't go to one of those Ivy League schools, even though you were accepted into a couple of them. And you chose to do something completely different, which is great, right? I think that was a good choice you made.
Yeah. So it all depends on what your career path is, right? So if you're a non-traditional student, you're probably not going to be getting into a lot of the big law firms because they are looking for Harvard grads in a specific age range with a specific skill set and experience, and they're only going to hire people from tier 1 schools. Right?
Oh, so they call tier, so Harvard or one of these other ones would be
Columbia,
they're tier ones?
Yeah,
So
tier 1.
What type of tiers are there? Like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3?
Yeah, I mean, these are all kind of informal and, in fact, sometimes offensive or vulgar classifications.
Yes.
But for ease of our conversation, tier 1 law schools, the idea of going to a tier 1 law school is number one, because your parents or your family has gone there before. Number two, you want the prestige, right? You want to be able to say, I went to Harvard. Number three, you're looking to go to a specific law firm or a class of law firms that only hire people from these kinds of from schools. Another thing is maybe you want to practice in a particular field of law, and the top people in that field of law that are on the cutting edge of that particular practice area are teaching at that law school. Another thing is, of course, if you want to work in the federal courts, and you want to be maybe a U.S. attorney, you want to work for a federal judge, those typically are cherry picked from law schools in Tier 1.
That's interesting. So that's kind of the, I didn't know that. That's very, very interesting. So I know from the outside looking in what law school is like. For me, experiencing it through you or vicariously living through you, what was law school really like, and what should people that are looking to become an attorney understand or should know about, going to law school?
Yeah, law school is nothing like anything you've experienced before. Okay, I think I can say that unequivocally, and I don't think any other of the attorneys out there will disagree with me, although probably disagreeing with half of what I've already said so far, so can't wait to see the comments.
Yes.
But when it comes to law school, it's a totally unique experience. It's designed to retrain your brain, just like boot camp does, right? In the military, retrain your brain to think like a lawyer. And to do so, they're going to pile a lot of work on you. You're going to have to do, really kind of mold and shape your brain to do critical analysis that your brain has not, and maybe even wants to reject in order to get you to be successful.
So what surprised you the most? What surprised you the most about that experience?
What surprised me was at my law school, we had a very good level of camaraderie. How much I relied on my study group and the people that I worked with, and how much it became a really great experience and positive experience. Of course, we all think about law school as this big mountain to climb, and you're on it, and you're on your own, right? You're carrying your book bags and your case law and your case text and everything else, and ultimately it is a solo journey, but it doesn't have to mean that you're doing it all alone. And it's very helpful to have people that think the same way that you do, meet other people that think like you. And for me in particular, I'm more of a collaborative person. So I like to bounce ideas off of my study group, hear what their perspective is, and that helps give you a more well-rounded view of what the case law is and what the law is, and kind of hear how other people may interpret it.
So now it's very common in the law industry or the legal industry to do like an internship or some sort of, clerkship or something like that. Is that standard, or is it required?
So in some jurisdictions, it is required. So I believe Canada has a requirement.
And they call that articling in Canada, right?
Yep.
Yep.
In the United States, most law schools highly encourage it, but it is not required for graduation.
And you didn't. So when you became an attorney yourself, did you do an internship? Did you do a clerkship with anybody?
Yeah, I had done an internship with the county attorney's office here in Brevard County. And it was a great experience, and it was interesting to learn and see how things worked. And I probably, if I hadn't been working full time doing my own business, I probably would have tried to apply to other internships in the meantime.
So, based on the people we have, or that you have, I should say, working here, a lot of them worked for a law firm prior to going to law school. They have their undergrad degree. They worked for some sort of legal practice or law practice, and then they went to law school. They did. Is it called law review? So I guess it's kind of the same thing as like an internship or some sort of clerkship. Is law review like? What do you think about law review?
So law review is a way to set yourself apart, right? It also is a great way to get your hands on a lot of different legal research and legal writing. If you want your practice, and again, you might think you want it, and then you get into legal research and writing as a class and realize, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this. Or you could be the opposite and think, wow, I really like to advocate before the court and argue and be an orator. And then you get in there and you're like, man, actually, I really like writing and the research aspect of it. So law review is number one, a way to prove that you know how to read, you know how to write, you know how to do citations, you know how to make proper arguments that can be recognized by the public in academia. It is also a great way to prove to a judge or another attorney that you know your stuff. It is a lot of work on top of your regular law school studies. There's a lot of pressure on you to get a lot of work done, but it can be very rewarding, and you get to network and hobnob and collaborate with a lot of the top people in your law school.
And so if you're trying to have a career, like we were talking about earlier, whether you want to go into the court system, whether it's a clerkship, or maybe work for some of these bigger law firms, big law we call it, right?
Right.
Is that kind of a prerequisite to being employed with one of these big law firms, or going to the federal, being a government employee? And is that required to do law review?
It's really realistically and practically, yes, because you're going to be competing against other people who have done these things. And, so if you've got 15 people that have done law review and you haven't, then you've got to show some other way to really get above that. Moot court is another alternative. If you don't do law review, then maybe do moot court. If that's the more orator kind of go and advocate before the court.
Okay.
Some people do both, and that's a lot, and your grades may suffer.
And what is moot court?
Moot court is essentially going and doing trials, but mock
Okay.
trials.
So like mock trials, you go in there and you maybe have some sort of sample or scenario, and then you have to
Yep, and it's
argue
all
back and forth.
competition among the law schools, and if you can win a moot court competition, that's even better.
Nice. So this brings me to my next question that popped into my head, which I think is going to be a very interesting question, is how challenging is a bar exam? Everybody I talk to that is an attorney now or that's about to become an attorney, they're so stressed out with the bar exam. So what is it like studying for the bar exam and, going and sitting for the bar exam? What's that like?
Yeah, so the bar exam is, it's a beast, okay? There's no other way to describe it other than people who try and attack the monster without having prepared and not sorted things out and planned things out and dedicated the necessary time will fail. It doesn't matter how smart or intelligent your IQ level. If you don't put in the time and the work to study and remember these things, you will likely fail. And a lot of people do.
Yeah, a lot of people. Do you know? I don't even know what the pass rate would be, the pass and fail rate, but I would assume the non-passing rate. I guess you don't call it fail. Non-passing rate. That's probably pretty high. I would assume.
It varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction.
And law school to law school, right?
So law school to law school, that's another factor that you can look at when you're determining which schools you want to go to is, what schools are going to prepare me for the bar exam that I want to take. And sometimes you might want to take more than one bar exam if you want to practice in multiple jurisdictions. But, it also depends on whether you went to an ABA or accredited school, if you're taking the bar exam for the first time or the second time, or if you're doing an apprenticeship.
So when you take the bar exam and you pass, great news, right? You have the champagne, you pop it open, you start drinking, it's a great moment in your life. Obviously you passed on the first try, but there's a lot of people that don't pass. And what is that like? I mean, I couldn't imagine the feeling, going through, what is it, 4 years of law school and studying for probably 6 months or something like that to sit for your bar exam, and then you get your grades back a couple months later and you realize you didn't pass. So what is the process if you don't pass? How long is the process from the time that you find out you don't pass, roughly, to when you can sit for the bar exam again?
Okay, so let me just try and offload some of you packed a lot in that
Yes.
one. Okay.
That's what I do.
Let's start with law school. Law school is either 3 or 4 years for most people. Okay, 3 years if you're doing it full-time, 4 years if you're doing it part-time. So just want to clarify because you said 4 years and some people were like, oh, I thought it was 3 years. So first once you graduate, you're going to sit down and study for the bar exam for usually a couple months, hopefully 2-3 months. I think usually there's 2 administrations of the bar exam every year, depending on which state you're taking the bar exam for. If you fail, you will not know until shortly before the next exam. So some people will wait until the administration after that. So you'll have a whole 12 months
Oh,
before
wow.
you take the exam again, and then
That's
move
that's
forward.
incredible. So the pressure to really retain a lot of knowledge, information going through law school, because if you don't pass, you might forget a lot of that knowledge. So then it just maybe compounds the stress levels of trying to pass that exam. So the second and third and fourth try sometimes, it's very, very
it's a
challenging.
really big blow to the ego. And unfortunately, the more times that you take and fail the exam, the less likely you are to pass the exam subsequently. So that's why it's so important as you go through law school. Everybody's telling you, hey, prepare for for the bar exam, dedicate time, do what you need to do. And the harder you work in law school, the easier it's going to be to get through bar prep. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. I'm saying the easier.
Yes,
Right.
I don't think it's easy at all.
It's not
based on
easy
who
at
I've
all.
talked to and who I know. It's just not easy. Everybody, it's challenging for everybody.
Right. So the topics that you're going to be tested on in the bar exam are not all of the topics that you took in law school. Right?
Interesting.
So there's going to be quite a few other topics that you didn't have credits or availability to take courses for. And then there's going to be, even within those topics, there's going to be other subtopics that were not taught in law school, right? You have
Oh, no.
700 page textbooks, property law, right? And you've maybe gone through 450 or 500 pages of those in that course. So what about the rest of those? You're going to have to learn all of that in bar prep.
And that's why I'm not an attorney, because I would be so stressed out trying to pass that bar exam. And then if I had questions that I wasn't trained on or I didn't understand, it'd be very, very stressful for me. That brings me to the next question is, if you pass, you get a grade, right? And is that done on a curve as well?
Yes. So basically everything in law school is graded on a curve.
Yeah.
So from the LSAT to your exams in your first year, your second year, your third year, and then the bar exam. Everything is graded on a curve. So if everyone does poorly, then you might still pass. If everyone does really great, then you're probably going to fail, even if you got what would normally be a
That's
passing
crazy.
grade.
That's really crazy. So does that affect, so what affects your ability to actually apply for, get licensed by a bar association, like the Florida Bar Association? Do they look at your LSAT scores, or do they look at your actual bar exam scores, or both?
So they don't care about your LSAT scores
At all. That's just to get into college
that's
or university.
only just for admissions purposes for an ABA accredited law school.
Okay, perfect. So now you're going to apply for a state bar, right? To get licensed to practice law in whatever jurisdiction you're in. Do those grades matter?
The grades in law school, usually not.
Or I mean the grades on your exam, your bar exam.
You have to pass the bar exam in order to be admitted to the bar.
So there's no like actual, so if you pass it's like a pass fail. So if you pass, you then can become admitted into that local bar, the jurisdiction that you're able to. Is there like a number they have, or like some sort of score?
Yeah, so that every bar association has their score for that bar exam that you have to reach in order to pass. Florida's a little bit unique. We have 3 different exams that you have to pass in order to become admitted to the Florida bar. So we have the multi-state bar exam, which is something that's administered throughout the United States. We have a Florida-specific bar exam, and then we have the MPRE, which is the multi-state professional responsibility exam, which you can take before the bar exam. It's really just an ethics kind of exam. It's a little bit easier, a lot easier than the bar exam.
Okay, so depending on the grade, you can apply. So you can apply if you get good grades, so to speak, or a great score. You can actually become a member of multiple bar associations if you really wanted to.
Yeah, that's the idea of the MBE or the UBE, the Uniform Bar Exam, is that you can take that one exam and that exam will be honored in another jurisdiction that has adopted that particular exam.
So in short, there's a lot of exams you have to study for and understand. And that's where the pressure, I guess it kind of tests you for your career, because if you're under an immense amount of pressure trying to study for that bar exam or whatever exam you're taking, that's going to prep you for, a career in the legal field, right?
Yeah,
It's very interesting.
It's from the moment you start law school to the moment you pass law school to the moment you take the bar exam to the moment you start practicing as an attorney, it's just go, 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 go.
So what are some common mistakes that people make when they plan on becoming an attorney?
I think probably underestimating the amount of work it's going to involve. And when I say work, I mean not just actual, reading. I mean work in transforming the way that you think about the world and how you approach problems when they're presented to you. I think that's probably the biggest reason a lot of people don't make it through their first year.
So when you you had your undergrad and you had an English degree. Am I correct?
Yep.
Saying that? So that was what, a 4-year degree or 3-year?
4-year, yep.
That was a 4-year, and then you were law school because you did it part-time because you worked full-time job and ran a business, right?
Yep.
And that's one of the reasons why you decided to become an attorney, because you were running your own business. You couldn't find an attorney that you actually liked working with, so you became your own. And you were a teacher as well during that time with your online training company. And then the part-time aspect of it was 4 years for you?
So the standard is 4 years.
Okay. And that was you. You went for 4 years.
No. So I decided to take extra classes because I'm a little crazy.
Yes.
And I graduated just over 3 years.
So just over 3 years. So the typical person would be 3 to 4 years. So you're looking at about 7 to 8 years.
Yeah. So the vast majority of people who are going to law school are going full time, and those people will graduate usually within 3 years.
And then you have to do the bar exam.
And then they have the bar exam. There's bar prep period, and then you have the bar exam, and then you have to wait for the exam results to come back.
And if you don't pass the first time, so it could actually take you 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, some people.
Wow, that's
I
crazy.
think there was a movie about a gentleman who had taken the bar exam like for 20 years straight.
That's crazy. That's a long time. Wow, you have to be very dedicated to do that. That's really nuts.
Well, and some states actually have laws.
surprising.
Like I think Mississippi will only let you take it twice.
And then
if you
you're
fail
done.
Twice, you're done.
Wow. And then you're stuck with a bunch of student loan debt, right?
Hopefully, you to go to a different jurisdiction.
Yeah, I would hope.
Yeah.
I would totally hope.
Maybe
So,
it's Missouri. I'll have to check on that.
I know there's some jurisdictions, and I want to say New York. I'm not totally sure. So I don't want people to, but there's some jurisdictions where you work experience, so you don't have to go to law school per se. You just have to have the work experience. And I think that's New York, isn't it? Like 2 years or something?
So there's Washington, West Virginia, California, Virginia, West Virginia, and
That was New York.
Vermont. California, Vermont, West Virginia, and Washington. Those four will allow you either 3 or 4 years of apprenticeship, and that'll make you eligible to take the bar exam.
That's why I work with you and that's why you obviously, did you study for the LSAT?
No.
No? Yeah, that's why I work with you, because you're super smart. Obviously, I would not remember those states, so that's very impressive. Very, very impressive. You're
It's
very
been a
smart
long
guy.
day, so apologize if my memory is a little fuzzy.
Yeah, we're doing this at night. So obviously, for all those people watching that don't know Andrew, he's a big time entrepreneur, right? He loves starting, creating businesses, creating a lot of value for people around him, including myself. He's created a lot of value for me in my life, and he is a super smart guy. So kudos to you, right? So that brings me to the next question. Now, obviously, as an entrepreneur, my background, I brought a lot of business contacts, right? I brought a lot of experience to help you kind of get what we help each other. That's why we get along so well. How important is networking in this field for you anyways, or for anybody that's interested in becoming an attorney?
Well, I think the level of importance depends on the practice area in which you want to go, right? There are some particular practice areas which are heavily dependent on networking. Things like if you want to practice in malpractice, right?
Yeah.
It's probably something you want to be very well networked with, so that if there is a problem, another attorney will know your name and immediately think to call you. Things like eminent domain, where there's very few attorneys, and those attorneys are the ones that you want to work with to learn the business. You're going to have to find those people and introduce yourself and find ways that you can co-counsel or work with them as an internship or something like that.
So referrals are a pretty big part of, starting. So now, obviously, you started your own law firm, right?
Yes.
You started your own practice. So Andrew hired me as his business development person, special projects, and I helped, kind of start the law firm with him as his business architect coach. And I remember we started this in 2021, the company in 2021. And it was during COVID, and we laugh now. We're like, we were so crazy doing what we did back then, right? You just we jumped into it and started. So networking was a very big thing for us to get a lot of the work in. Now, obviously, if you're working for big law or another law firm, and you're just maybe what do they call it, associate attorney, networking may not be as important at first, but you should definitely build a network of referral business, because even though you work underneath somebody, you still want those referrals coming in, because it depends on the firm, but compensation it's based on performance, and there's a lot of other factors that go into it.
So there are very few areas where networking will be a bad thing for you.
Yeah, obviously. Now I think
there's really nothing, no position as an attorney that you're going to have that networking has zero effect on.
So now, based on what I said earlier, what is the job market like? It's 2025. Right? Things are rapidly changing. Obviously, more and more people are apparently enrolling in law school. What is the job market like for an attorney right now, based on the people that you've spoken to or know?
Yeah, so I think there's always going to be a demand, at least for the next probably 10 years, maybe I'm wrong, who knows, for litigation, right? I think it's going to be very difficult for those jobs to be taken by automation or artificial intelligence. Transactional work is the things like drafting wills, doing deeds, these kinds of things. That's something that's a little bit scary for a lot of those people. And I think the job market for people who are doing transactional work is a little more grim. I think there's going to be less and less need for a lot of attorneys doing that same level of work.
Not just because of AI and the legal profession being deployed, and there's all these rules around that, right? But because a lot of the transactional stuff's going to be AI. And so if you're not not even computer programmers or some of these other professions, if you're not the top level, it's going to be very difficult to find employment or make a good living, I think, in the next several years. So anybody that's looking to become an attorney, you have to be really good at what you do.
Right.
Meritocracy, right? So only the best will survive. And who knows what's going to happen.
Law school, right? It's meritocracy.
Yeah, and that's what I think law school prepares people for, that top level type stuff. So how do you think AI is going to? It's obviously changing the legal system slowly. Because there's a lot of rules and regulations that govern your license. But how do you think AI is going to affect the legal space in the next couple of years? Because AI is rapidly changing. I mean, even some of the stuff that, video conferencing technology, legal research tools, a lot of this stuff is becoming very, very AI focused, right? And so while it speeds up time and effort, is it going to take attorneys' jobs away?
Well, I think AI is you can look at it more as a paralegal or a legal assistant or even a clerk. I've seen judges use AI tools to help them draft opinions or summarize the orders that they wrote that were very complex and complex business matters. I think that there is a very good integration for AI in the industry. But in the next 2 or 3 years, I don't think that it's going to be enough to make a huge impact rather than some of the hype that's been putting out there.
So if you were a future attorney, if you were either thinking about entering law school because of the job market's frozen, right, and you're looking at, hey, I just need a career change, would you be worried about finding employment as an attorney in the future?
I think. Probably. I think it's not as great as the numbers seem to indicate that people are creating the demand for. I think law schools are producing more attorneys than there will be work for in the future. And I think that's partly because these larger law firms, even that do litigation, they're going to start putting a lot of this grunt work that they used to give to associate attorneys, first year attorneys, to AI. And have the AI do that grunt work and all that garbage work.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. What they call garbage work.
Garbage work.
Yeah. It's hard work. It's a lot of work.
It's reviewing contracts, drafting things, all of these things that we normally would give to a first year associate. to sit down and just bang out, they're going to give to AI and then take the credit for themselves as a higher billable rate.
So that being said, I personally think that it's going to get cheaper to hire legal counsel, right? So I think AI is not, and this is my personal opinion, obviously, right? I think AI is going to, I think there will be job opportunities or employment opportunities or business opportunities for attorneys in the future. I think AI is going to be more of like a virtual assistant like we're talking about. But I think as a result of that, it's going to bring down the cost of hiring an attorney, right? So your attorney may bill $500 an hour. Now this is 2025, so it might be more or less, but say $500-$600 an hour, but they're going to bill you half the time. So even though you're spending more per hour, you're going to actually spend less because they're using technology and tools. And once some of the rules come out of committees and whatnot, and they allow attorneys to do certain things, I think that's what will happen. So I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity and abundance for attorneys that understand technology and are passionate about being an attorney. And I think that, going forward with any profession, whether it's becoming an attorney, whether it's, a plumber, electrician, you have to be passionate about what you do. I think the days of doing a job for the sake of a paycheck, and I know a lot of people want to become an attorney because they think attorneys make a lot of money. And based on, my research and my experience working with a lot of attorneys, it's a good living, but, plumbers make more money. There's some of these other professions, blue collar trades make more money. So, again, if somebody's looking at becoming an attorney, don't do it for the money, do it because you like being an attorney.
100%.
And that's the point I'm trying to make, right? You love English. You're like I call you a wordsmith because you love English, you love contracts, you love business. And so being an attorney for you, in my opinion, was very beneficial for you, right? Because I don't think you're not the plumber type of person, right? You're not really a tradesperson. So you're an educator, you're a teacher, and that's, I think, why you do so well as an attorney. So that being said, what is one tip, looking back, what would you tell yourself on day one, your younger self on day one of law school?
Day one of law school. I would say get organized.
Get organized?
I think get organized. I think for a lot of people who are going into law school, undergrad was a breeze, okay? Which means you didn't have to buckle down. You didn't have to learn all of these time management skills, organization, blocking off time for your day, being very disciplined about sitting down and doing your work and, being honest about it. You're obviously smart because you're getting admitted into law school, right? Everybody around you is smart. But, what separates the wheat from the chaff are the people that sit down and have learned those skills and are able to take it seriously enough and be organized and well enough to put the work in. And if you are not disciplined, you need to learn discipline. Another really important thing, and I know you said day one of law school, but even before law school, if there's one skill that I wish I would have worked on more, it was speed reading, right?
Really?
Speed reading. There's a massive amount of work in terms of reading that if you're looking at time management,
yes,
you want to have time to do other things,
yes,
like eat, sleep, work on your business and other things. Speed reading with a good level of comprehension is probably a very good skill.
I remember a story. You were doing so much reading that you said, I need glasses. And every day you'd come, we'd have our conversation and you would say, James, my eyes hurt. I need glasses. And I said, you don't need glasses. And then you ended up I said, Andrew, just go for an eye exam. And you went for the eye exam and the eye doctor said, Andrew, you don't need glasses. And I remember you coming out and saying, "Hey, I don't need glasses," and we started laughing, right?
Good,
so
yeah.
that was a funny moment in my timeline while you were going through law school. Well, I guess that's it, and I hope anybody that's listening to this podcast actually understands, what it's like to become an attorney and how hard it is, and the outlook. And obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to comment below or we'll try and answer them.
I'd like to add just one thing. If there's one thing that hey, let's say you've made the decision you want to go to law school, you've picked the law school, you've got your plan set. There's something today that was not present when I started, which is artificial intelligence. Okay, and I think there will be a day that you will be running late. You will you forgot to get your coffee. You forgot to do your reading. Do not give in to the temptation to shirk off the work that you have to put in for law school to ChatGPT, to Grok, or to another AI program.
Do the work.
Do the work. If you pass that responsibility off to an artificial intelligence, you will not properly shape your brain to do the kind of thinking you need in order to be an effective attorney. That's what's going to separate you from other people who are out there in the career field that you're competing against that use that technology and now don't know how to be a real attorney. And they're going to continue using artificial intelligence, in which case you're no better
Than anybody else.
than having used the artificial intelligence in the first place.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You
That makes a lot of sense.
why would anybody hire you if they can just go to Grok and get the same answers?
So add value. I think that's the future. If you want to be an attorney, you have to find ways to
be better than ChatGPT.
be better than AI and add real value in people's lives.
Right.
That being said, well, that was a great episode, and look forward to seeing you next week, Andrew.
Yeah. Thanks.
See you later.